iterates. He throws things out, and he sees how people react. It manifests. Once a mind is stretched, it never goes back to its original form. And that's my concern. The more we're talking about this, and we need to be, look what he's doing with masked agents. Look what he's doing federalizing the guard. Look what he's doing to intimidate and voter suppression. Look what he's going to do with the DOJ. Look what he's trying to do to rig the election in North Carolina. This is Missouri, down there next to Florida, not just in Texas. Look what he's doing in terms of the $230 million that he apparently is, or the DOJ, all the pardoning, all of this great grift, the biggest, most corrupt administration in history, not just the $400 million plane, but the $1 billion of your tax money is worth in food stamps to pay for the damn plane so he can take that toy home with his foundation in 93 or whatever.
We'll do it live. Okay. No.
We'll do it live!
Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live! And things suck!
Welcome back. I missed you guys. Did you miss me? Did you miss doing it live? Oh, man, sorry guys, but look, until you guys start hitting that Venmo link down in the corner of the screen, I gotta work. Sorry, I've been busy filming a bunch of projects. We're out in California. My goodness, guys, Southern California's gotta be the most overrated place on the planet. Just letting you know. All you suckers who were telling me that the traffic was better in California, you can go straight to heck, okay? Because it was not better. It's horrendous. But anyway, look, man, I had to come back because there's just been way too much news and way too many people taking credit for that news when they don't deserve it. But beyond that, man, the Gav hands have been busy. This is what happens when we don't do it live. The Gav hands take over, and this guy has just been everywhere, just spewing his bullshit in every corner of the internet, and he's just absolutely ruthless. But we've got some huge developments. Without burying the lead, we have proof that an LA Fire Department battalion chief ordered his firefighters to leave the Lachman Fire smoldering despite their protest. Man, talk about a smoking gun. Beyond that, what else do we have? Climate change is over? Did you guys see this? What's the motto of our show besides doing it live? Oh, this is the wrong headline. Talking about Gav hands. This is what the Gav hands are really good at. Bill Gates says climate change will not lead to humanity's demise. What is the motto of our show? What do we always say? Don't trust panic. You never trust panic. In fact, my entire trading strategy is I counter trade panic. And guess what? I'm doing very well. If you counter trade panic, you will actually do very, very well. And what we have here, guys, this validates what I've been saying for years. I've always had what I think is the most reasonable take on climate change, which to me is really simple. It's like, yes, it's a problem, it's a thing. It's not that big of a problem. It's not going to be the end of the world. And we certainly have far more immediate concerns, especially when it comes to wildfire. No amount of Teslas is going to make the weather less angry and make the fires stop. It's the fuels. And that's the one thing that you can control in the wildfire triangle. So I'm always saying, like, look, I don't really care about climate change. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. I'm just saying it's not something that we need to be concerned with. We need to be concerned with getting rid of fuels. That's number one. But beyond this incredible shift, guys, this is personally frustrating for me because, look, the only real criticisms that I've faced in general when it comes to my film Hot Shot, I had people telling me that I was a climate denier, right? Like the only real hate mail, except for one, which I'm going to get to later in the show, all the hate mail I ever got was from blue-haired freaks who were just panicky about climate and how dare you make a wildfire movie that doesn't tie into climate change. You know, and I didn't say climate change wasn't a factor. I just said, look, we've had fires forever. We're going to continue to have fires forever. It's a permanent part of the ecosystem. So I'm not even going to waste any time talking about climate change. Who cares? We got to get rid of the fuels. And that is the rational take. And we finally see the second biggest climate huckster out there? The second biggest climate huckster aside from Al Gore. You know, and I wouldn't even count Greta anymore because she's just sort of like a shit-lib protester now. She's just protesting for all kinds of random stuff, like she's going to Gaza for some reason. So she's not even into climate anymore, which should have been a signal that this was coming. that clearly it's not an existential threat if you're going to go on a diesel boat to Gaza. You know what I mean? But to have Bill Gates reverse course on this, now there could be ulterior motives because, you know, he's into the tech space. And as we know, with the ascendance of this terrible AI, it is a huge energy drain, right? So they need to build these massive data centers, which require tons of energy. And there's just no way they're going to be able to produce enough energy with solar panels to be able to feed this stuff. And so I think they're recognizing like, we kind of backed ourselves into a corner by limiting how much energy we can produce for this climate stuff. But I'm telling you, people get really obsessed with this. Climate change is a problem. I would say, you know, some of the best estimates that I've seen from reliable people who aren't panicky people, it's probably about a 3% hit to our GDP in terms of adapting to it, which we are adapting to it. This all of human history. We adapt to things. This is normal, okay? And that's one of our biggest strengths is our ability to adapt to things. Except for wildfire. For some reason, we just keep making the same freaking mistakes over and over. That's the one thing we can't seem to adapt to. But on that note, gav hands. The gav hands. You got to watch out for the gav hands because if they're not busy accosting your wife, what they are going to be doing is cutting firefighters. This is a subject. Let me swap these. We don't want to see my stupid face. This is a subject that got very little attention, okay? Nobody is talking about, now forget the Democrats face back, like forget the Democrats part. Like, again, I don't like the politics of this. You might say, oh, you're going after the gav hands. Well, look, this dude is responsible for the Palisades fire. We have to talk about him. But you know how he's always virtue signaling? He's always doing these photo ops in front of CAL FIRE, and he's wearing the jacket with their emblem on it, like he's their commander, and he's always trying to LARP like he's in charge of CAL FIRE. And he always likes to take credit for their wins, but he'll never take credit for the losses, okay? You can't do that. Now, Gavin Newsom cut like 3,000 firefighters, 3,000 seasonal firefighters from CAL FIRE right before the Palisades and Eaton fires. Did you guys know this? How many of you were aware of this? I bet none of you were. This article comes from the UK. This is the UK having to report on CAL FIRE because the LA Times and none of the other journalists in California are willing to talk about this. As wildfires continue to ravage Los Angeles, leaving homes destroyed and residents scrambling for safety, questions are being raised about CAL FIRE's decision to scale back staffing levels for the winter season. Now, look, Gavin is always saying, we don't have fire season, we have a fire year. Fire season is year round. Well, then what the fuck is he doing laying off firefighters on a seasonal basis? Now, seasonal firefighting is normal because, of course, we don't have a fire year. We have a fire season. It's seasonal. And have you guys noticed what's going on with fire season right now? It is completely dead, and it has been dead for a long time. This is how it works. You have to adapt to the conditions, not the calendar. The calendar doesn't determine when you get fires. As I've shown you throughout history, we've had fires going back forever. We've had winter fires ripping through the Palisades. This is the Castellamare area. This one, 1956. This is the Newton fire. Does that look familiar to you? Does that not look exactly like what the Palisades fire looked like when it was ripping through towards the ocean? Well, this was on Christmas Day. Winter fires are not new. Winter is when we get the worst Santa Anas, okay? We always associate Santa Ana fires with October, right? But that's just when things happen to get in alignment. The worst Santa Ana winds are typically in the winter because these kinds of winds are a cold weather phenomenon. If you remember the worst fire in history in 1871, it happened in October, okay? This was a cold weather phenomenon. Drought is a cold weather phenomenon, right? Rain is a warm weather phenomenon. So we always get these winds in the winter. The question is, have we gotten our season-ending rains yet? That is the question. It's not, is it December? Is it November? Okay, well, it's November, so let's lay off the seasonals. No. It's, are the fuels okay to leave alone? Are we good to walk away from these fuels in the condition that they're in? But no, guys, the fuels going into the end of 2024 were below critical, okay? They were at like historic lows. So any perception that somehow you can get through a December with no season-ending, fire season-ending rain event, and fuels at below critical levels, and you're gonna lay off all of your firefighters, I'm sorry, I don't care if it goes into February. If those conditions exist, if you have dry plants, you have risk for wildfire, and you cannot lay off your seasonals. Now, Bobby Garcia, the famous, the legendary Angeles National Forest Fire Chief, Bobby Garcia was the first U.S. Forest Service Fire Chief to make all of his hotshots full-time permanent employees, okay? This is a major issue. It always has been with the Forest Service. He had the foresight and the understanding to know that your season, your fire season, your seasonal employees, they have to be there when the conditions are in alignment, not when the calendar is in alignment. And because of this, Texas Canyon hotshots were on site, on the Eaton fire. They were down in the neighborhood, okay? Because like some people are more responsible. So according to this article, the state's official fire management agency recently announced its transition to winter preparedness staffing statewide, citing cooler temperatures and reduced fire activity in many regions. These are not conditions that you would predicate your fire readiness on. Like one of the worst fires in state history, the Thomas Fire, was in December. And because we get the worst Santa Ana winds in December and January, if you've got dry fuels, guys, I don't care if it's cold. I was freezing when I was on that fire for like 2 weeks straight. I was freezing, but it was still ripping. And at that time, it was the biggest fire in state history. And of course, you know, I just showed you a fire from 1956 on Christmas Day. Okay, so anybody who just knows basic fire history in California knows that you can't say, oh, well, it's cooler and we have less ignition, so it's good to ramp things down. It's like, no, guys, if you have critical fuels and you still haven't gotten your season-ending rain event, you can't do this. Critics are now questioning whether this move was premature, particularly in Southern California, where the agency itself acknowledged the elevated fire risks would persist. How many red flags, like literal red flags, are we gonna ignore here? In a statement published on its website, CAL FIRE revealed that starting December 2024, my goodness, a month before the fire, it had adjusted its staffing levels to align with what it described as a seasonal decrease in fire activity. Again, they're predicating this move on the calendar, not the conditions. The agency explained that this move was part of a strategy to optimize resources during the cooler months. However, again, who gives a fuck about cooler? Wildfire is not a hot weather phenomenon. It is a dry weather phenomenon. It's a dry fuel phenomenon. However, their seasonal outlook also noted concerning conditions above normal temperatures and below normal precipitation will persist through February, sustaining elevated fire risk, particularly in Southern California. They knew this was coming, and yet he cut these seasonal employees anyway. Should staffing cuts have been delayed? Obviously. Yeah, and we can say this in retrospect, but I'm telling you, you can say this just at the time. Contemporaneously, if your fuel conditions are at below 60, your LFMs are below 60, you cannot be cutting firefighters. At the very least, if you're gonna cut your NorCal guys, keep your Southern California units intact. Southern California has long been recognized as a hotspot for wildfires during the winter months. Thank you. Due to the infamous Santana winds and dry vegetation. Despite this, CAL FIRE appears to have reduced its readiness statewide, even in regions flagged as high risk in its own forecasts. What? A retired fire captain speaking anonymously criticized the timing of the staffing cuts. This decision doesn't make sense for Southern California, where the fire risk doesn't follow the same seasonal trends as the rest of the state. Thank you. They knew the conditions were ripe for fires, but it looks like they still went ahead with scaling back resources. The Los Angeles Fire Department, which primarily oversees urban firefighting in the area, has borne the brunt of the emergency response. Yet CAL FIRE's involvement in certain rural and state managed areas could have provided much needed support. Not could have, definitely. You know how much I like the CAL FIRE guys. I think they're great. And the thing is, this is their bread and butter. You really don't think that having these guys up in the wildland interface wouldn't help? What we saw in LAFD's whitewashed after action report. So even after they scrubbed the infamous 6 missing pages from the real after action report, which we will get for you, they admitted that they had chiefs, we're talking battalion chiefs, who lacked basic understanding of remedial wildfire tactics. They didn't anchor the fire. That's the first thing that you do on any fire. They didn't do it. And you want to tell me that, oh yeah, maybe the CAL FIRE guys would help. Are you kidding me? Of course they would help. And of course, Gavin was bragging all along. He was bragging all along about how we pre-positioned all these CAL FIRE resources. What he didn't tell you is that he cut 3,000 of them and left them short-staffed when they knew the risks. Dude, I've said this till I'm blue in the face, guys. This fire is so screwed. It never should have happened. There was such a comedy of errors, this cascade of failures that led to this catastrophe. It wasn't the freaking winds. Stop putting it on hurricane force winds that never happened. Crone Ranger is saying, is it starting to feel deliberate? You know, I'm gonna get to this. You also said, I don't remember January being a Santa Ana time of the year. It is. And I'm gonna point to this. Rich, look at this comment on my tweet on this. From Rich Thompson, the legendary Rich Thompson, who is the best incident meteorologist in the game. He knows what he's talking about, okay? Santa Ana winds are usually strongest in the winter, not the fall. However, usually by the time winter comes around, there's been enough rain to mitigate the fire potential with the stronger winds. So given the unusual dryness in January of 2025, there should have been more concern. So to answer your question, Crone Ranger, or your statement, January is Santa Ana time of the year, but typically by the first or second week of November, we've had a season-ending rain event. And in Southern California, a season-ending rain event is typically 2 inches of rain. That's usually enough at that time of the year to put a kibosh on the season. But the thing you have to understand, it's not that the Santa Ana winds didn't exist in the wintertime. That is their prime time. It's just that typically we've had that rain event by then. And so you're not getting these monster fires like the Tubbs fire, right? The Woolsey fire, the Camp fire. You're getting those right before those season-ending rains where things just happen to get in alignment. So when you have an anomalously dry year, well, now all of a sudden you've got the alignment of dry fuels and those winter winds that normally you wouldn't notice because they ain't causing fires in January. Well, now they are. Sorry. Donia, Santanas go well into March some years. That is 100% correct. It's just a matter of, is there snow on the ground? Is there moisture that's going to preclude an ignition? Because remember, winds look a lot more nefarious when they're blowing smoke. Okay, guys? And this is the other thing, that the perception that you had hurricane force winds on the fire, I'm telling you, the winds weren't that strong. And we've seen the data. We know that they were not that strong. They were strong, but they weren't that strong. And the thing is, when you see smoke blowing in that wind, I'm telling you from experience, it looks so much more menacing. Okay? You could have a 40-mile-an-hour wind day at home, and if you just see palm trees moving, it doesn't look nefarious. But when you see smoke and embers ripping through at 40 miles an hour or even 20 miles an hour, it looks way worse. I'm telling you. Okay? So a lot of this is just perception. So this is a huge, huge screw up by Gavin Newsom and CAL FIRE. This absolutely should not have been happened. And remember, Gavin Newsom actually vetoed a bill that would have made these guys permanent. Remember, Chief Bobby Garcia on the Angeles Forest made his guys permanent because he knows what he's doing. And yet, who does Gavin always criticize? It's the feds. And yet they're the ones who actually know what they're doing, and they're doing it right. This is why I'm always getting so frustrated. Now, speaking of things that the Gav hands aren't good at cutting, brush and vegetation. Now, he tweeted about this, or the blue-haired intern running his account tweeted about this. I'm signing an executive order. I got to do the Gav hands while I say this. I'm signing an executive order directing agencies to cut through red tape, preventing the safe and quick expansion of California's prescribed burns. We've seen tangible progress with this method, but we've got to do more to keep reducing the risk of catastrophic wildfires. Oh, he's cutting red tape, huh? Cutting red tape. Who's red tape? Where is this coming from? And I'll just point out that I said Gavin tweeted this 30 minutes after my tweet about the Pacific Palisades fuel break. What are the odds? Now, we've talked about this multiple times. For those of you who watched me for a while, we talked about how we could cut a fuel break around the entire Pacific Palisades interface. That would cost about $500,000. It would take a couple of dozers, 2 days. And if you wanted to add in a firing operation, yeah, maybe it's $750,000. But if you do that 300 to 500 foot fuel break, the Palisades is still standing. $500,000. That's all it would have taken. And yet they're spending millions getting Italian marble for the California State House, the legislature building that he's renovating for $1.5 billion of taxpayer money. And yet we couldn't spare $500,000 to save the Palisades. So I tweet about that. And then like 30 minutes later, Gavin's tweeting about, oh, I'm signing an executive order to cut red tape. I'm going to sign an executive order to cut red tape so we can do more prescribed burns. Well, where have we heard that before? And why should we believe him this time? Sounds familiar. You guys remember this?
Billions and billions of dollars. We've 10x'd our investments in that space, 10x'd it. From the day I got in, the first executive order I signed as governor of California was around vegetation and forest management. Waived CEQA again. Did an emergency order to fast track these efforts. Unprecedented investments in this space.
Dude, his Gav hands, the Gav hands when he was so delighted to say CEQA. This part.
CEQA.
CEQA again. So here he is. This was on the Sean Ryan show. That just absolutely abysmal episode from Sean Ryan, where this guy, he didn't ask him a single tough question, and he just accepted all of his bullshit. So here's Gavin. This was what, like 7 months ago? 6-7 months ago, Gavin did this. Maybe it was 5 months ago. And he's talking about cutting red tape. Well, wait a second. So he's saying on Sean Ryan that the very first thing that he did when he got into office was he signed an emergency executive order cutting CEQA red tape. And yet here he is on October 29th of 2025 saying, I'm signing an executive order directing agencies to cut through red tape. Dude, all this guy does is lie. All that he does is lie. I've never seen any, like, and this, you know what's so crazy? I feel like, look, I could be a good liar, right? I'm pretty quick on my feet. I could be a good liar, and sometimes I do lie. I try not to. And the thing is, in the rare circumstances where I do lie, I feel badly about it, right? So I know I wouldn't be able to pass a lie detector test. This guy feels nothing. He, like, his posture doesn't change, his gait doesn't change, the timbre of his voice doesn't change, his pulse doesn't quicken, his palms don't get sweaty. He lies so fluidly and so effortlessly, and about things that are so consequential, like this. Newsom misled the public about wildfire prevention efforts ahead of worst fire season on record. People died. And he lied about, oh yeah, don't worry guys. I'm cutting red tape, we're getting rid of fuels to protect you from wildfires, and then people died from those wildfires because he didn't actually do this work. He's constantly lying about it. California inflates their prescribed fire numbers by 12x. So when he's talking about 10xing the work, what he's talking about is 10xing the bullshit. So when you have a history of this guy constantly lying about this stuff, why should you believe him that he's doing it now? Well, the answer is he's not. He's not. And you guys monitor this. Remember, just Google YTD, year-to-date, state and agency, RX fire acres. And every day, the first result that comes up, you'll be able to see how much prescribed fire they're actually doing. They need to do at least 1 million acres a year just to meet his mandate. It was his mandate to do 1 million acres of prescribed fire a year. They're not doing it. Now, what else does Gavin lie about? The blue-haired intern running his press office account responded to this tweet saying Palisades fire victims from January 7th are now suing Gavin Newsom and the state of California for negligence, claiming the governor's failures that led to the devastating fires. And the blue-haired intern running his press account said, this is straight up false. And they are correct. This is straight up false. Hunter, Eagleman. They're not now suing him. They've been suing him. They've been suing him since July 10th. And I responded. This is from the actual lawsuit. And I said, somebody tell the blue-haired intern running this account that they have been actively sued by the Palisades fire victims since July. From the complaint itself, the amended complaint also adds the state of California as a defendant for allowing the Lachman Fire, which started on New Year's Eve in Topanga State Park, to rekindle on January 7th. January 7th was a rekindle of the Lachman Fire. So notice the date on this press release, on this lawsuit. So again, they're trying to claim the governor is not being sued. And this is just rhetorical weasel words, by the way. Okay, the state is being sued. The state of California is being sued. But who's the head of state? The buck stops with him. This guy's in charge of the state. So it's like, he's always bragging about, oh, we're suing Donald Trump. We're suing Donald Trump. When in the reality, he's suing like ICE. He's suing a federal agency that's under the purview of the chief executive officer, right? So when he's saying he's suing Donald Trump, yeah, you can say that colloquially, but we know he's suing a federal agency under the purview of the head of state. Well, Gavin Newsom is the head of state. And so he's being sued, right? He's being sued. And that's just the reality. And we know that, dude, this scumbag, he's now referring to the Palisades fire victims as opportunistic plaintiffs. Can you believe this guy? I mean, like, it wasn't bad enough that he called Spencer Pratt, who just lost his home and his family lost their home. It wasn't bad enough that he called him a C-list reality star and a conspiracy theorist. It's like, now he's calling the 10,000 plaintiffs who are suing him. The 10,000 plaintiffs who are suing him, they're opportunistic plaintiffs. And you know what's funny about that? I know some of these plaintiffs who are being represented quietly. There are some very, very high-profile celebrities who are big boosters for Gavin Newsom, who had their houses burned down because of Gavin Newsom's negligence on Topanga State Park. They are suing him. He is calling them opportunistic plaintiffs, and they will still bankroll his presidential campaign. That's how screwed up this whole situation is. It's like Stockholm Syndrome on frickin' steroids. Casey K asks, is he going to fire the people at CARB? Absolutely not. Now, he's claiming that he is cutting red tape at CARB. He's claiming that they are cutting red tape with the state parks and natural resources to be able to conduct prescribed fire on protected coastal sagebrush, right? Which obviously that should be automatic, that should be necessary, because that's where you get the most devastating fires, is in the Malibu Canyon area, these coastal regions. My goodness, I'm drawing a blank. Laguna Beach is another place that has to be very careful because they're overdue for a big fire. Diane Cotter says he really is an enigma. Yeah, and he's on cocaine and alcohol. Save California Hat says, you lie about your golf game and you don't feel bad about it, I'm pretty sure. You know what? Let me tell you something about my golf game. I hit, and Save California Hat can validate this because he was here. I hit a 369-yard drive. I drove the green on a par 4 for the first time in my life. I'm 41 years old. In 2 weeks, I will be 42, and I hit a 369-yard drive onto the green. And you know what? I was putting for eagle for the first time in my life, and of course, I screwed it up, and I 2-putted. No, I 3-putted. See, I can't tell a lie. I 3-putted. I should have had at least a birdie. My goodness. See, you see, Save California Hats. I'm not lying. Who would admit to 3-putting an eagle opportunity? Casey K says, the year-to-date total acres of prescribed fire in California just under 34,000. California state agencies have only burned 586 acres of that. So this is what I'm always telling you guys. I'm telling you, they're so far behind. And I know I sometimes sound like a crazy person, but guys, guess what? On a long enough timeline, I'm proven right about everything. Like this. This became huge news, huh? Huge news. Now, what was the big news? Where is it? Where was it? We've got, oh, screw it. What is with these stupid ads? This is the big news. Now, the LA Times even picked this up. LAFD whistleblowers destroy official narrative on the Palisades fire cause. Let's find, you know what? Let's find the original LA Times. Man, it's just been a monster day. Look at all these news organizations that are picking up this story. KTLA is picking it up. LAFD crews told to abandon smoldering blaze that reignited this Palisades fire. LA Times reports. The Los Angeles Times, days before the Palisades inferno, firefighters were ordered to leave smoldering burn site. Now, where did they get this? Where have you heard this before? This is the big news, guys. Where have we heard this before? Now, those of you who've been watching me for a while, None of you were blown away by this headline. And why were none of you blown away by this headline? Well, because we've been talking about this for months. For months. Now, where did they get this information? This was the tweet that started it all. Guys, this story has now broken containment. We're now in the LA Times, we're on Fox News, we're on News Nation. This was the smoking gun, this video right here. Now, I posted this back in October 8th? What's the date on it? October 9th, 9:17 a.m. Central Standard Time, AKA God's time. Wow, watch to the end. Video of the Lachman Fire in Topanga State Park still smoldering by the eventual Palisades fire origin. The fire no longer plumbed, all hoses gone, no firefighters, no patrol. Newsom State Park just let this burn unattended. Unacceptable mop-up. Now, when I posted this, this kind of broke the internet. A lot of people picked this up because this was the smoking gun and I was the only person who had this because I've got good sources. You guys notice how we've been ahead of the curve on everything? I just want to, look, I've been saying told you like a billion times this week. It's not fun. It actually sucks. You know, you always hope to have that moment where you're vindicated, especially when early on, back in July, when I was saying this was a rekindle, and I had even firefighters in my DMs telling me I was an idiot. And, oh, they're never going to be able to prove that. Like, they mopped it up. They wouldn't do that. Man, I've endured a lot of trash talking over this. And the thing is like, have you guys ever been embargoed on something? You ever been told something and a lawyer or like a media person told you, hey, embargo this till Wednesday. And it's like some juicy thing. You're not allowed to talk about it. And dude, it is not good for your arteries. Like when you've got something that you want to share with the world, something that is super valuable, and you're told, we can't talk about this yet. I knew that the ATF had concluded this was a rekindle months ago. And I was hinting at it, but it was embargoed. And I couldn't say how they knew it, who was responsible for it. And I've had to dance around that because it was embargoed indefinitely. And we've had to sit here waiting for them to release this before I was allowed to talk about it. So sometimes I will have an attorney say, hey, embargo this. Wait a week, wait 2 weeks, wait until we get to this landmark. And sometimes I'll embargo myself. Sometimes I will come across some evidence and I just say, I can't put this out, okay? I gotta wait because we gotta make sure that the wheels of justice turn. You don't want people to get spooked or whatever. Like things have to happen in a certain order. And sometimes you give someone else a scoop. And that is what I did here. So when I posted this video, I was contacted by a bunch of news agencies, including the Los Angeles Times. So they hit me up and they wanted information on this video and I provided it to them. Now, as we know in the past, the LA Times has been absolutely horrendous commie gobbledygook. They've been terrible with wildfire reporting. And in the past, they've actually stolen some of my reporting off Twitter without even asking for it. At least this time, they had the decency to ask. And the reason it wasn't decency, they asked because they had no way of validating this video without getting the background on it. So they had to ask me. They couldn't just take this and copy and paste and put it into the report. They had to actually they had to validate it themselves. Now, that video was shot, and I know who shot it, and I got their permission, and I forwarded their information to the LA Times, and I said, guys, good luck. I won't show you the actual text messages because I don't, it's not appropriate, but I said, it's a rabbit hole. Good luck. Wait till you learn about why they left. And to my surprise, they actually did report on this stuff. Noah Haggerty, who's been great, he did that initial report 2 weeks ago where he picked up my reporting and he talked about that video because this is the proof. This is the proof that they walked away before it was out. And this wasn't smoldering underground. This wasn't some secret underground root system where this thing was burning. This was visibly smoldering. Now, on top of that, what else do we have? Spencer Pratt. Now, he posted this a while back, This was a text that he received because, guys, let me say something. I tweeted about this earlier. Spencer Pratt is doing legitimate journalism, like legit investigative journalism. All you people who underestimate him because he's a C-list reality star and he wears jelly sandals when he goes to Washington, D.C. and wears shorts and doesn't have a suit when he's about to go visit the FBI and the DOJ. All you guys who make fun of him thinking that just because he's funny and he has this performative style on TikTok, like he's not to be taken seriously, he is doing serious investigative work. He is getting all of these whistleblowers. He is doing this, okay? And what he has done is the kind of old school investigative journalism that we used to venerate in media. And we used to make movies about people who do this stuff, who are like, dude, this dude's like legit hitting the pavement and getting this stuff. And I'm telling you, he has so much more than you will ever realize. I was in the meetings with him, these closed door meetings with senators, with DHS, the US Forest Service, BLM, like Bureau of Land Management, Department of Interior, IRS, the FBI, the Department of Justice, the SBA. I was in all of these meetings where we talked about things that are embargoed for now. You have no idea how much Spencer Pratt has and how many people have reached out to him because A, he can be trusted. B, he's doing what no person in wildfire history has ever done. He's managed to maintain attention on a devastating fire for more than 2 weeks. Normally, these fire victims fall through the cracks immediately and they're forgotten. And then you end up with Paradise, California, where 7 years, 8 years later, 75% of Paradise is still dirt and ash. Well, he's not going to let that happen. He's been dogged on this. He knows that all of this was BS, like the official narrative is BS. And he got this from a whistleblower. He said, hi. And just so you know, people who are saying, oh, you shouldn't have shared this. He said, please keep this message private. It's like, okay, what you don't know is the next message, Spencer asked him, hey man, we got to share this. Is it okay if I share this and I don't include your name? And he said, yeah, go ahead. Okay. Trust me, I've been in these conversations. I know that he has this guy's permission. We've validated who this guy is. We know where he was on January 2nd. I've validated this in multiple ways. He said, hey, I'm an LA City firefighter who was told to pick up hose on January 2nd in the Palisades. Remember that date. There were several hot spots and it was definitely still smoldering. Tons of smoldering tree stumps still remained that needed to be dug out and water applied. I believe a hand crew needed to come in and mop up the whole area with water. Now, a hand crew wouldn't necessarily do that with water. It would be a hand crew plus an engine company because, you know, the hand crew may be getting in there with Pulaskis and trying to milk that water down into the soil. I just wanted to let you know so you have the truth. I had a chief walk by me that day and I showed him a hot spot. This is the critical part. He said it was good enough and we continued to pick up all the hose. I was using water that was draining out of the hose to put red hot coals out, meaning they had discharged the line and he was just using what was left, the discharge that was left in the hose to put out red hot coals. This is unacceptable for mop-up. I couldn't believe we walked away from that burn scar the way it was. I have almost 23 years on and I don't feel the fire from the first was properly mopped up. Do you understand now why I've been saying for so long that that fire was not properly mopped up or contained? It's because we've had this information for months, okay? We can't share all of it with you. So much of this is embargoed, either because lawyers have told us not to put it out, because there's a timing to certain things, or because we've decided, we can't put this out, okay? But Spencer put this out a couple weeks ago, and then the LA Times picked this up and took his scoop and took this lead, and they got these messages. Now, he said, please keep this message private. We do fear retaliation as firefighters. Hopefully this truth gets out and has impact. Do you see the conflict there? And this is something you guys have to keep in mind. I've been defending LAFD from the start. And look, honestly, who I'm defending are the firefighters. I'm not defending the organization because fuck the organization. I'm defending the pipe hitters because I know these, dude, I've been around these guys. They'll literally die to save you, okay? They're not the problem. The problem is the chiefs. Not all of them, but chiefs ultimately are politicians. And anybody who's been in the fire service knows this. And especially in the LAFD, and especially under Karen Bass, The people who were being elevated to chief positions, they weren't being elevated on merit or qualifications or experience. Clearly, even the LAFD admits that. They admitted that they had chief officers who didn't know anything about structure protection or like basic wildfire tactics. Okay, so this is uncontroversial. And what we have is a situation where a battalion chief, Mario Garcia, that wasn't in the LA Times article. Just as another indicator that, like, dude, we know, trust me, we know a lot more than the LA Times does, because like we're their source for their leads. We've been giving them scoops for months now. And I gave them another scoop about a month or so ago, which I've been hinting at, which is like even more damning for Gavin Newsom. And what I've done is like, look, I could put it out there. There's nothing wrong with me putting it out there. But like, I've got a small audience. The LA Times is massive. And so sometimes it's better if you give up a scoop to someone who can actually get more eyeballs on it. And like that's where I'm at. And so what I've done is I gave this scoop to the LA Times. This was about a month ago. And what I want to do is I just want to see, all right, did they publish it or not? It's going to require FOIAs, so I'm going to give them some time. So I'll give them till the end of the year. And if they don't publish it by the end of the year, then we know that they're covering it up. And I'll release it, okay? So like that's how some of this stuff works. Sometimes you have to give scoops to these shitty organizations because look, they have a bigger audience. And I will concede that ever since Noah Haggerty has been put in a position of authority at the LA Times or more prominence, the reporting has improved significantly. So again, I want to give a hat tip to Noah. I think he's outstanding. And he definitely seems to be turning around the LA Times. So I really like that. But notice the date, January 2nd. January 2nd. Because I'm going to show you like how far this story has like steamrolled into popular culture because it's pretty crazy. It's actually super crazy. You guys want to see?
Thousands of fire victims suing the state of California, saying it is to blame for January's devastating Pacific Palisades fire.
It is. And just as I want to give a disclaimer right here. We often talk about, on this show, we talk about the dense mustache of justice. We also talk about Alexander the Great Robertson, who is the lead attorney on this case. He is the reason we know what we know about this fire, okay? Remember, like that big live stream that I did back in July, I was just reading his lawsuit. It was his team that did all this investigative work that started this ball rolling, okay? So I've talked about him a lot. I don't know if you guys even know what he looks like, but he is a founding member of the League of the Dense Mustache of Justice, and you're about to see why.
William Lajeunesse is in the Palisades neighborhood of Los Angeles and joins us now. William, what's the latest?
Well, John, Governor Newsom says the state is blameless here, that the lawsuit is meritless because an arsonist is to blame. However, lawyers for the victims say, wait a minute, that failures and negligence on the part of the city and the state make them financially liable for the losses that you see. So let me explain. The U.S. Attorney has already charged 29-year-old Jonathan Rinderneck with setting the Lachman Fire in the hills above the Palisades. It was around midnight on New Year's Eve, and by dawn, firefighters claimed to have put that Lachman Fire out. But investigators later found that wasn't accurate, that firefighters failed to extinguish the fire, and that embers continued to smolder underground and reignited to cause the Palisades fire. And here is their alleged smoking gun. January 2nd, 24 hours after firefighters said the Lachman Fire was fully contained, this hiker video shows the fire still smoking.
Does that video look familiar? Where did they get that? I am the only person who had that video. I'm the only person who had it. I am the single source of that video in the public sphere. And I had permission to share it. It's crazy to see how viral this went. Do I get any credit? Well, of course not. Why would I?
The lawsuits say the firefighters failed to use thermal imaging or mop up the Lachman Fire so it was out. They also say the state parks department, contrary to its own rules, failed to inspect where the fire began on the park or post a fire watch, despite a high wind forecast that investigators say reignited the embers a week later.
There's no evidence that a single state employee did their job, followed their own policy manual, inspected that area where the fire was, knew that these devastating winds were coming. They just didn't do their job. And we intend to hold the state of California responsible.
Governor Newsom rejects the claim, saying, quote, the state didn't start this fire. That was an arsonist. And the state wasn't responsible for responding to or monitoring the fire. But opportunistic plaintiffs' attorneys are now going after this Department of Parks and Rec.
He threw the firefighters under the bus. He took no responsibility, completely dodged the issue of his own state parks agency not.
Look at that dense mustache of justice right there. Now that's Alexander the Great. He came out of retirement to work this case, and it's very admirable because this case is going to take years. Okay, and he's done a lot of backbreaking work on this case already, and he's very measured and he's very soft spoken, but this dude is a killer and he's a great man. He donated. He won't tell you this, but he donated his, I think it was a Raptor truck, to the community brigade in Malibu, so they could use it. And it was all kitted out to be able to go on fires. So it's like a fireproof truck, and he just donated it. He's like, trust me, he's one of the good guys. This is why it's so frustrating to see the gav hands calling him opportunistic. Like, he's done plenty in his career. He was supposed to be retired, but he knows how screwed this case was, and he's got enough experience to be able to handle this case, and he's doing it very well. And more than anyone, he's been vindicated because he was the first one to tell us, like, yes, this was a rekindle. He was the one, and I was only getting my information from his lawsuit. So my hat is off to Trey. They misspelled his name. It's Robertson, not Robinson, but whatever. But it's great to see that this is national news. And what do we see here? We've got the LA Times, which is a far left commie rag, and then you've got Fox News, which is like kind of center right. I think some people think of it as like far right, but if you know the far right, it is not far right. But it's permeated both sides of the political spectrum, which is very encouraging to me, right? It's nice to see. I think I could see why Fox News would pick it up, because this makes Gavin Newsom look terrible. And that's also why I'm so shocked that the LA Times is actually reporting on it, because it makes Gavin Newsom look terrible. He's absolutely culpable. It also hit Newsmax.
When the most destructive fires in Los Angeles.
Look, a lot of this is redundant, so I'm not going to make you sit through all of it. But yeah, they're showing the video. Again, they're never going to credit me, even though I'm the reason they all found it. This is Roger Beale. This is his co-counsel. He's great. Let's hear him.
When we heard the federal officials announce that the Lachman Fire embers continue to burn undetected, we knew that wasn't accurate. And several people contacted us and said, we have video of smoldering embers in the ground in the burn scar of the Lachman Fire. And as with the reports we received prior to that, we looked at the video, and sure enough, you can see smoke coming out.
Now, did you notice that date? January 2nd, 11:30 a.m. January 2nd, 11:30 a.m. Now, there was also a story, I think it was on like ABC. ABC picked it up. Dude, like, everyone is picking up this story. It's going absolutely crazy. It's pretty incredible. But in it, they asked some difficult questions. They asked some difficult questions of the fire chief. They didn't ask any difficult questions. And in that, they claimed that they picked up their hoses on January 3rd. But the video of that smoldering burn scar is from 11:30 in the morning on January 2nd. And I've also validated with Spencer's whistleblower that, yes, in fact, they were picking up hoses at like 10:30-ish, 10:45 in the morning on January 2nd. So why would they lie? Well, they wanted to make it sound, clearly, they wanted to make it sound like, oh, we stayed on that fire for 3 days. They didn't. They didn't. I don't know why they continue to think they can lie about this. Guys, you're busted. You just start telling the truth. Like, the firefighters are starting to tell the truth, and that's the thing. They're starting to realize, oh, like when I published that video of the smoldering burn scar, it's like, you got us, because you can see that it's not burning underground. You didn't need IR sensors to pick this up. It was visibly smoldering after all the hoses were gone. So, all right, the jig is up. We might as well start telling the truth because we gotta clear our name. So all the firefighters are looking at him going like, we told them we shouldn't leave this. And that is the crux of this main story. Red State picked it up, and look at this, dude. They're showing screenshots from a C-list reality star in news articles. Gosh, think about where we are with media, where like Spencer Pratt is doing all of this investigative journalism for all these professional journalists. It's like him and a fucking mustachioed chicken farmer in Tennessee doing all this work. It's crazy. But these firefighters are going like, hey man, I see the writing on the wall. The jig's up, we're caught. Yeah, we left the fire too early. And they're all going like, I gotta show to people, I gotta show the public, I was warning this was a problem. We were told by our chief. And the thing you gotta understand, I know Diane is gonna understand this. Anyone else who's in the crowd, who in the chat, who's been in the fire service knows. Fire service is like a paramilitary organization. There's a command structure and you obey orders. And this is what doomed Granite Mountain. And a lot of people don't know this, but there's Soup's decision to leave the black and go into the green on the Yarnell Hill fire. It was challenged by, I think it was their Charlie captain. And he said, you sure you want to leave the black? We're going to lose sight of the fire. And of course, you never do that, right? You never do that. He was kind of intimidated. And because this guy was a former Marine, he knew he had to take orders. And so when his Soup made an order like, we are leaving the black, we are going into the green, even though he knew that it was a bad call, he obeyed the order. That's how it works in the fire service. And the rest is history. 19 people died because they made a very, very tragic mistake that never should have been made. And the same thing happened here. This is like just absolute remedial. You do not walk away from a smoldering fire. It's that small, right? If it were 100 acres and you had a tiny little island that was still smoldering, that's fine because you got a big enough buffer. But an 8-acre fire, that's not enough. That's not enough. That's way too small a fire that you have to do a 100% grid on that thing and put it out. You have to put it out. So anyway, this thing has gone absolutely nuclear. And you know what the crazy thing is? I want to show you, you can see zooming in right here, where we zoom in on this smoldering stump, see all this unburned vegetation back here, all of that, that is the point of origin of the Palisades fire. Immediately downwind from this smoldering stump. That's not to say that this smoldering stump was the thing that flared up, but it's a pretty simple conclusion that you see something that was left visibly smoldering within, what, 15 to 20 feet of unburned vegetation, immediately downhill and downwind. This is tragic, guys. It's tragic. Now, here's the other uncomfortable thing we got to talk about. And again, those of you who have been in the fire service, you're maybe going to know this, right? You're maybe going to know this. Here's an uncomfortable reality about municipal firefighters while I let you guys watch the sign language guy convey the bullshit from this chief. There is a chip on the shoulder of municipal firefighters when it comes to wildland firefighters. You know, I talked about the hate mail that I would get for Hotshot. One of the weirdest hate mail messages I ever got was from a municipal firefighter. And he was calling me all kinds of bad names and said that, you know, wildland firefighters are a joke and you're a joke and da-da-da-da. You know, and this guy sent this email he sent it from his agency email. He's a municipal firefighter in Texas. And it's like, dude, it's got his full name on the email address and it's a government address. And he's like talking shit to a guy. Dude, all I did was make a movie. Like, you don't have to like the thing, but like, how did I hurt you so badly? You're taking time out of your day to yell at me and tell me what a loser I am. Well, you know, I looked him up just to see, like, is this guy for real? Is this guy an actual firefighter? And he is. And you know, the thing is, like, when you see someone acting like that, being that mean and unnecessarily cruel, that's not someone that you like clap back on and get mad at. That's someone who's clearly going through something and is hurting. That's someone who's in a lot of pain. And so I looked him up. Instead of responding to him, I looked him up and I saw that his kid was involved in a really bad accident and nearly died. And I thought, I need to pray for this guy. I can't be mad at this guy. And clearly, this guy's hurting. You don't talk to people like that unless you're in a lot of pain. And the other side of this, though, that's very clear. Municipal guys look down on wildland firefighters. They think of them as like the Cub Scouts of firefighting. They don't think of them as real firefighters. And look, the reality is, in large part, what you do in wildland fire is just extreme gardening. You know, that's all you're doing. You're cutting down plants for the most part, but it is extremely dangerous. Like the kinds of hazards that you face as a wildland firefighter are insane. And they come from all kinds of crazy angles. Like you have jets dropping, you know, thousands of pounds of retardant right on your neck, could snap your neck in half. You've got like this happened on the ranch fire in the Mendocino complex, where a firefighter from Utah got killed when a tanker dropped Phos-Chek on a pine tree over him, and it knocked off a branch that broke his neck and killed him. So look, they're risking their lives. They do extremely arduous work. But the reality is that municipal guys look down on wildland firefighters, and they think of fighting wildfires, they refer to it as watering the plants, and they don't really give it much thought. And so the uncomfortable truth here is that the Los Angeles Fire Department is a municipal firefighting agency, and they're not quite as well versed as, say, LA County. And I guarantee you that there's going to be a lot of people in that agency who are kind of flippant about wildfire. And this is just an inconvenient truth about municipal agencies, even in California, is that they don't really take wildfire that seriously. They should, obviously. Crone Ranger is saying, is it ineptitude or, well, we're going to get to that. I've talked to you guys about embargoing information. So we have more information on this. We have more information on the battalion chief. We have information on the internal after action report that the LAFD did and censored. They took out 6 pages. But it's not quite time for us to reveal that. The reasons for leaving that fire, it's a combination of ineptitude and poor decision-making and ulterior motives. Now, here's the thing, guys. You know how much I hate conspiracy theories. I hate them. They're always a distraction of what the real source of the major problems are, which is typically just banal, plain old bureaucratic incompetence. But I will say I've had multiple whistleblowers from within the agency itself, where when we've sort of shared information, they're like, all right, now I'm starting to think there was a conspiracy. So I will share that with you, that we have had several whistleblowers from within multiple agencies express a feeling like maybe there's something at play here. I really don't want to go there because I think ultimately, look, you see a lot of people benefiting from fires, but remember I had that scene in my film where we talked about the wildfire industrial complex. People always benefit from catastrophe, okay? There's always going to be vultures who take advantage of these things. That doesn't necessarily mean it was done for a reason, but the thing that I'm always telling you guys, we've now established this precedent where people know they could just toss a road flare on a windy day and wipe out an entire city, and then they can snatch up real estate on the cheap in a fire sale afterwards. And this is going to incentivize our enemies to do this. And you already see foreign investors snatching up all of the prime real estate throughout the Palisades and Malibu. Crone Ranger says, I mean, how can the chief who ordered them to leave justify his decision? What logical reason is there? Unfortunately, there's not a logical reason for it. And that's what you will learn. It is not a logical reason. However, there's one logical reason why you would leave that fire. That is because the state has an obligation to secure this fire. That is the logical reason. I'm not going to confirm whether that was the reason they left or not. But the state has a non-delegable responsibility to secure this fire perimeter. This is why Gavin Newsom is being sued, by the way. He's being sued because the state has a responsibility to secure that fire, and they did not do that. So the thing you have to remember, we're piling on the Los Angeles Fire Department, but what you have to understand is they put out the fire. They did. It didn't get properly mopped up, but you have shared responsibility here, okay? They suppressed the fire, and that is their responsibility. It's not their responsibility to monitor the burn area. It's not their responsibility to secure the burn area. That's the state's responsibility. So you could have a situation where it's like, all right, we've suppressed this fire. We've got other things that we got to do. This thing is out. The state has a job to do. Let's let them do their job. And then you're transitioning the command to the state. That could be a reason. Again, I'm not going to confirm that, but this is why the state is being sued, because they actually do have that responsibility and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. Okay. And this is why Gavin Newsom's being sued. By the way, I saw this. Dude, these guys from the LA Times, they really love to pat themselves on the back. Great investigation from Elaine Check. Days before Palisades Inferno, firefighters were ordered to leave smoldering burn. Great investigation? Dude, all you did was look at mine and Spencer Pratt's Twitter feed. Great investigation on this thing that I posted 3 fucking weeks ago. My God, these people. Now, I wanted to address one more thing. One little lie. Remember how we talked about the reservoirs and how everybody's saying, oh, there's nothing we could do. There's nothing we could have done to stop this fire. I hope that I've pointed out multiple ways that we could have stopped this fire, aside from just the basic reality that they left a fire just smoldering and completely unattended. So obviously there was something that could have been done here before it rekindled. But even once it ignited, they could have kept this thing smaller if they actually were able to use the reservoirs there. And we've had a lot of pushback from Mayor Karen Bass and other people like the LADWP who have tried to claim, well, those reservoirs, that's not for firefighting. That's not for, really? You have a 117 million gallon reservoir in the Palisades, and then you have another 6 million gallon reservoir in Chautauqua. 6 million gallons is more than enough to supply residential water, okay? Why do you need 117 million gallons? Well, it's for conflagrations. That's why you have a 117 million gallon reservoir with helispots. You have internal cisterns where they have pumps where they can siphon up water. The original purpose of that reservoir is for firefighting purposes, as you can see here. But do you guys remember in 2019, the Palisades fire that they stopped with the help of helicopters? Listen to this.
Those helo tankers that you just mentioned, where are they getting their water right now, Brian?
We have a variety of reservoirs in the area. They can take from the ocean, but typically do not. The fixed-wing super scoopers often do, depending on how choppy the seas may be nearby. But we do have some reservoirs nearby, and the helitanker that you saw can fill in a little more than a minute and be back at the scene.
A little more than a minute. Because we have multiple reservoirs right there, and that's where they're filling up. A minute. It took 6.5 minutes for helicopters to refill on the most recent Palisades fire because that reservoir was empty and because the Chautauqua reservoir, the Palisades reservoir, was also offline. Unbelievable. Now, I want you to notice, look at this footage. This is the fire working its way uphill. Look at this tree in the corner. Look at that tree on the left side. How much it's bending and swaying. Let's see if we get a better shot of it. Watch that tree. See how it's like rocking back and forth? Looks like it's in a freaking hurricane, doesn't it? Look at that. Look at how much that's leaning over. There is no wind on this fire. No wind. That's all convection creating that wind, pushing that. Look at that. That's like, there's your hurricane force winds. So this is the thing you got to remember. The wind speeds from actual readings from weather stations, the Palisades, they were between 20 and 30 miles an hour. Okay, they were not hurricane force winds. And when you see videos of like trees, and things swaying in the winds really heavily, just know the fire is influencing a lot of that weather. Okay, so just a little fire physics lesson to close our session. Let me just check in on the chat, see if we got anything else going on. It's for watering the manzanitas, says Dylan. Yeah. Yeah, the reservoirs are just for watering the brush that then caught on fire. Oh man, I saw another thing. Rick Caruso was attending a tree planting, a garden planting thing where they're planting a whole bunch of flammable brush flammable vegetation in the Palisades. This is like right up there with him sponsoring that park where they had like fire engines that played like fire sirens and like alarm noises, thinking, oh, you know, firefighters are such heroes. Kids are going to want to play on fire trucks and, you know, be able to drive the fire truck, not thinking like, guys, these people just lost their entire community. This is a traumatic thing. They don't want to be hearing like fire sirens. That's like that's been haunting their dreams for the last 9 months. Are you kidding me? Natalie says, I truly hope that the plaintiff's lawyer is the antidote to the pure evil that is Gavin Newsom. Godspeed to him. You know what? I will say that Alexander, he's got a dense mustache for justice. So if anyone can do the power of Christ compels you against the Gav hands, I have a lot of faith in Alexander. He's a great man. He's a very, very great man. And I really appreciate all the work that he's doing. Now, on that note, this is going to be my last live stream ever in my current state. My wife and I, on Sunday, are getting baptized. And so I will be reborn in a new life free of my sin, accepting Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. I think it's nice to get baptized in your 40s. I think it's better than getting baptized when you're a little baby because you have no real appreciation for what it is. But I will say that, I denied my faith my entire life. I was an atheist my entire life. It was being around wildfire that brought me to God. It was being around this force that was so much bigger than me, so much more powerful than me that it humbled me. And it made me realize that, yeah, I don't have it all figured out and I'm not in control of everything. And witnessing this, along with witnessing kind of just the pure evil of these politicians in California, I started believing in evil first. And that led me to realize, okay, if I believe in evil, then I got to believe in goodness and I have to believe in God. But I will say that the awesome force of wildfire, just how powerful it is and how small it makes you feel when you witness it firsthand, it really does change you. And it brought me to that point where I realized, I'm actually not in control. And once you can break that layer of ego, a lot of things unwind and life gets a little bit easier. And this is something that I pray for with Gavin. This is a man whose ego simply cannot be stifled. And I've never seen somebody's ego block God from working through him in a positive way like this man. And so I pray that something awakens in him that allows God to work through him and do something good. Because what I will say, for all the crap that I give him, this man can do so much good, much like if somebody cuts you off in traffic and you want to rip their guts out, if they just so much as wave like, my bad, it all goes away in a heartbeat. If this man were to drop the act, stop calling people opportunistic, stop calling people C-list reality stars, and say, you know what? We screwed up and we're going to make it right. We're going to make it right. And all these other communities that are at risk, we are going to make sure this doesn't happen to you. I would forgive him instantly. Instantly. This is not a political grudge. This is just about disrupting this loop where we see the same thing happening over and over and over again. It's maddening. And I'm just so sick of watching so many people get wrecked by this. You know, my aunt lost everything. Her apartment burned down in the Palisades. And she's in her 70s. She's never going to be able to move back in her lifetime. It's never going to happen. She lives off Social Security. How is she going to be able to afford to get back in the Palisades? I'm sick of seeing this stuff, guys. So if this man could just drop the ego just for 2 seconds, just stop lying for 2 seconds and just accept that there's something bigger than you. There's something more important than your political ambitions, and just accidentally do some good for people. So that's what I'm going to pray for. But anyway, I'm really looking forward to it. It's a big step for me and my own humility in my life. So when you see me next week, we will do it live, but I'm going to have a glow. Maybe it won't be man on fire because I'm going to be dunked in the baptismal waters at my church. So it'll be man smoldering. That's what it's going to be. So it'll be like an 8-acre brush. I'll be like an 8-acre brush fire that the LAFD got a hold of. It's still going to be smoldering, and you know what? We could rekindle it, but you know what? It's going to be with the righteous fire of Jesus Christ and justice and truth and honesty. And you know what? Save California hats. I'm not going to lie about my golf game ever again. On that note, in this dystopian world of AI, the only way to prove that you're human is to do it live. Thanks for joining me, guys.